Welcome to Talent Takeover
Unfiltered.
When it comes to working hard and keeping it real, we know our shit. Self-care, happiness, inner peace, and time. I'm Brianna Rooney, and this is Taylor Bradley.
Hey, y'all.
And we have thrived in chaos and turned it into an art form. So Taylor, what are we doing here today?
We're here to give you a raw, under-the-hood view of all things recruiting and finally give credit where credit is due to a long underrated industry that's full of quote-unquote experts.
All right. Well, then let's take this show to the road. All right. Welcome to Talent Takeover Unfiltered, coming to you hot. Boom, 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 boom. Shimmy, 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 shimmy. Let her sweat. Taylor Bradley over here, the one, the only.
Yeah, more or less. I'm doing good. How are you?
Fantastic. Good. Remember, you all can watch this on the Millionaire Recruiter YouTube, and that's where it's super simple to comment, show us love, ask questions, give us, who knows, a review of the episode or what kind of subjects you want. Like, that's what we're there for. We're super excited about that, and we do get back. So today we are going to talk about building your personal brand. So I love that.
It's waiting for it. I didn't know you were going to build your brand, So I was ready to go with it. Choreograph it. And then you didn't do it. So I was like,
step it back. Well, if you missed last week, we talked about the brand of an employer because, marketing, recruiting, it goes hand in hand. So definitely listen to that one. But this one is all about you, your personal brand. And I will tell you, this is for sure 100% trend for at least a year, I would say. Do you think it's more than that? I mean, I'm talking about NTA, not just in other aspects.
Yeah, I would say, really just this, I would say maybe even a year and a half, but it's been within the last 2 years, like a recent trend. I'm sure everybody listening is like, yeah, that's like all you see on LinkedIn now is people just
all you see
their brand. Yeah.
All you see. And I think it's because, you and I have been in this for 16 years. We've definitely talked about how to re-energize yourself. So definitely check out that episode for sure. But in this, I think people are tired of the layoffs, of, what's going on with us, the drought in money. We're used to making X amount. Now we make this, like the constant, we're going to throw you aside because AI just came into play. It's like we're constantly, in my opinion, being shit on. And when hiring's the most important thing to do, probably not a good idea to shun your recruiters. But I think that's why people are doing the personal brand, because they want to take their own career into their own hands, which is what we're calling the takeover. They're taking over their life, their career, and now building themselves. So if they are at a company, and this is what's kind of cool to see too, people that are very happily employed and at good companies, they're still building their personal brand because it's almost like you need an escape route.
Yeah.
You need to be able to push that button and be like, hey, I'm cool.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So I have a lot of thoughts about this because I feel like it's something that, and I've literally had somebody ask me this since I was working with you, but not because of you, but just somebody asked me, do you really think that it's important to build your brand on LinkedIn? Does it actually serve a purpose? Does it help you when you're trying to find a job? And that was a question that they posed to me. And I gave them my very, very honest answer about that, and my honest answer is I don't think that it helps you get a job. I don't think in today's world where I feel like you look at LinkedIn, that's all anybody is doing is building a brand for themselves. I think it's still an important thing to do. Don't get me wrong. I think it's important to put yourself out there. I think it's important to showcase what you do, or if you're creative and this stuff comes natural like that, go for it. I do think that is great. I don't think it's ever going to do you a disservice. I just don't know that it necessarily gives you a competitive edge when you're, and again, this was specifically about finding a job. That's the question this person posed to me. It's do you think building a personal brand or having a huge following on LinkedIn or posting frequently helps you get a job in a very competitive market like this? And they were asking me for my opinion about me. And I was like, I haven't really been dedicated to building a personal brand. I haven't. And I can be honest about that. But I don't think whatever traction I've had from just, being on the podcast or, posting different things, I don't think whenever it came time for me to look for a job, it gave me a competitive edge at all. So that was my honest answer. Do I think it could for people? Absolutely. Did it for me? No. But have I invested a lot of time and energy into that. No, I haven't.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to disagree with you here, because I think that when you're having like a lot of the connections and people see your name all the time and hear your voice and just kind of see you, it's almost like, oh, I think I know Taylor Bradley. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like your resume does at least go up in the pile, or at least maybe you would know someone that you would that would network with you, that like maybe you wouldn't have if you didn't have that personal brand and that personal voice. I would think, but again, I mean, I haven't obviously looked for a job in eternity. But I find that I have a lot of takes on personal brand. I started building mine in 2018 when I did the Millionaire Recruiter YouTube, and there was like no one on there. Okay. Like there was like no recruiters doing that. I only did that because my employee was like, you do this. And we did a course. But I will tell you, I regret not taking advantage of it years ago. Because I just wasn't into it. I'm not really big on social media. It's not my jam. I don't watch YouTube. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on Instagram. You know, are my brands? Yes. And yes, I help with content and stuff like that to a certain extent. Kate, you do most of it. But I would say if I took advantage of that, I think today I'd be in a very different spot. Yeah. Whereas now the last year and a half, I was like, oh shit, like this brand's actually really powerful. And this is actually how I've gotten clients. And this is how I've gotten into coaching. And how I've gotten into speaking. Like definitely doors have opened, right? You know, so I wish I would have taken advantage of it a lot sooner, because now it's very crowded. Yeah. So building your personal brand now is difficult. Yeah, for sure. So I think you have to have a tool for that, like 100%. I now use pager.co. So we'll put that in a link for you guys to check that out. From the UK. Brand new thing that I'm using. I freaking love it. You definitely need some kind of tool. You need either ChatGPT for sure to keep up with like the content, the ideas, like, but at the same time, when going back to your authentic voice, I think what sucks is please do not build a personal brand if you don't believe in it. And if you don't believe what you're doing, and if you don't, you know, you're trying to, again, just ChatGPT freaking everything, because there's a difference there. I use it to either inspire or to make my words just sound a lot cooler sometimes. But I think what's important is we're seeing a lot of these TA influencers that haven't actually accomplished anything. So they're trying to sell all these people on this big, you know, dream of recruiting or starting your own agency and stuff like that, when in reality, what have you done? Yeah. You know? Yeah. So, good.
No, I was just going to say, I think when you did it, like going back to the Millionaire Recruiter YouTube, I mean, I think you started that probably at the perfect time. Like you started it, there wasn't anybody around doing that. You were kind of one of the first in that space. It took off, you know, and you were just this like seemingly regular, you know, woman. I mean, now granted, I know how like weird.
How dare you call me regular?
I don't know how weird and special you are, but you seem pretty fucking regular to everybody else. No, I'm kidding. But you know, like it just, anybody could do it. Like you showed, just like whenever I go back to like your story, your success story of like, I mean, you didn't go, and I'm quoting her, y'all, so I'm going to
go ahead.
You didn't go to college. You didn't have a ton of work experience. You started your own business. You crushed it. Like it was success. You know what I mean? Like you were a pioneer in your space for the YouTube. You were a pioneer in that space. Like you've done the work. You have the track record to show that. But whenever I go on LinkedIn these days, I'm like, how do I differentiate somebody like that versus anybody else on there? And it's just oversaturated with people. That's why when I was asked that question, again, since we worked together, so like in the last 6 months, somebody posed this question to me about, do I personally think it can help you in today's world find a job or gives you a competitive edge? And I disagree. I just don't think it does. And then I also want to go back to, you know, that episode that you and I did, it was over a year ago. It was so long ago. And we were kind of just like venting about like, where's our network? You know?
Oh, yeah.
That's
everyone disappeared. Yeah.
That contributes to my belief that I think people like to interact and be engaging with you when like things are great, you know? But then maybe it's like when you're needing help or reaching, it's like, where is that network? Did building that personal brand help you when you reached out to those people? Did it actually help you? And so that's where I was like, that's my personal experience, is that it didn't help. When I was reaching out to those people, it was like crickets. Yeah. You know? And so I do think, all that to say, I do think it can help people. But I have seen it on LinkedIn, you know, where people put up a post and they've been out of work And I'm talking like, I know everybody's like, oh, we see those every day. And you do. Like you see them every day. But I'm talking about some of the ones that are like really well written and just get you in the heart or the feels or something. And then people start sharing it and then people start commenting on it. And then somebody's like, I'll put you in connection. I have seen it work through just like anybody, a bystander kind of on the outside of like seeing how well like networking and how well people can come through for you. But I just haven't personally lived that. And it's usually like, again, it's something that's got to get you in the feels because you don't see that on every post. And that's because, also there's like literally there's multiple posts a day. I mean, it's the same sob story. I'm not saying that in a tacky way. I empathize with that 100%. I cannot stress that enough. It's like, I could have posted, and I actually worked with Richard, one of our old employees. This was right after you and I stopped working together, and he was trying to help me craft like my post. And I was like, to like say, I'm looking for work or whatever. It just didn't feel authentic to me to do that. And it also was just like, what am I hoping to get out of this? Like, what is more me? What am I more hoping to get out of this? And I think that was a question that like anybody that's wanting to build a personal brand should ask themselves is like,
what are you getting out of it?
What are you hoping to accomplish from this? Because if it is just to find a job or you may not get out of it what you're wanting to. You could get something completely different, but also amazing, But I think it's one of those things where I don't know. And maybe it's just the market and it's oversaturated and these types of posts and brands would have landed differently 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But now when that's all you see, I feel like you've really got to do something to make your brand, your personal brand, stand out amongst, the millions of other people and thousands that are posting a day and are trying to build their same brand and are doing the same types of posts. It's just like us with this podcast. And that's why we feel like we've had any success with it we're not trying to build, we hadn't been thus far. And we're so grateful for all of our listeners who just come to us organically and who like us being our authentic selves. Because if we had this podcast be super structured and super great,
some agenda,
it would just it would be overwhelming, which is what I imagine. Like when you're really focused on trying to build your brand and you're like, how do I stand out amongst all these other brands? How do I stand out amongst all these other podcasts? It's like, what I think has made us stand out is just being ourselves and just talking a lot of shit and being really honest and authentic. And so I think, you've got to incorporate something in building your personal brand that's going to make you stand out over everybody else that's trying to do it, because it's 1,000% oversaturated right now with people trying to do the same thing.
I think when building your personal brand, I think what's really important is do what's fun for you.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you this, like if it is not fun, ditch it for sure. Unless you have some kind of very specific end game where everything to do with your brand goes there and it's a job for you and it's a job, then that's a little bit different. But it's going to be an uphill battle, when building that brand. And I think what's really important is to build your voice.
Yeah.
And I want to take a moment to talk about this is brand voice because, and actually I have not used this yet, so don't quote me on this, but I saw an email today. It's from copy.ai. Okay. I started to look at them because I was training someone on something else, but started looking at it and they sent me an email about brand voice literally just this morning. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I never thought about the tone and voice of my brand necessarily until a couple of weeks ago where I was building a one-pager because now I'm coaching. So if anyone needs coaching, I'm here for that. But I really focusing more on like mindset and tactical as well. And so I'm building these like 3 one-pagers essentially to speak to different audiences, So it's like agency owners, recruiting teams, and then I think entrepreneurs. But anyways, so I'm having this, right? And I'm having a really good friend of mine who's been in the recruiting space for a really long time look at these. And she's like, I got to tell you, this is not your brand voice. This is not your really fun. This is corporate. Are you trying to sell to corporate? And one of them I was because it's internal recruiting training. I'm like, well, this one I am. She goes, okay, well, maybe you keep that. She goes, but these are off brand for you. Well, no, like I like this aspect and I like that, and so she was trying to read it and she's like, your brand is really fun. So don't take the fun out of it. And so she asked me a very serious question. She's like, do you think you can't sell fun? And I was like, well, shit, I've been selling fun for a really long time because I think recruiting is really fun. That's why people work for me. I think that's why people watch the YouTubes. I think that's people come here and listen to our podcast because it's fucking fun. It's real. It's fun. It is what it is. And you know exactly what you're going to get after it. You know, you may cry, laugh, cuss, you know, and that's fine. So I think that that's really interesting to talk about what is your tone that you're looking for, and is that authentic to you and also authentic to the person or people you're selling to. And if it's not, are you okay with that? Are you okay with living in your own space? And for me, sorry, Kate, if she's listening, again, she does the brand and marketing. I'm like, Kate, we got to fund the shit out of this. We're like, you know, and it was funny because I just developed a new website for Millionaire Recruiter. And the person telling me this, she's like, I'm looking at your website, I'm looking at your YouTube, and I'm looking at these one pagers, and the website and YouTube are on point and these one pagers are not. So it's like, that's why I had to go back to Kate. I'm like, hey, we got to fund the shit out of this up. We're like, we're missing the point here on the brand.
Yeah.
So all that really matters.
Yeah, that's really good advice on the voice of it. I think people will probably have some questions about that to dig in there further. And it's like, I have a question. Do you feel like you still place the same value on building your personal brand in today's world that you did 2 years ago? Like,
I think it's more important.
You think it's more important?
I do. Yeah. For me and where I am. I will tell you this though. It was maybe like a year and a half ago, is I would get people like, I would be doing biz dev reach out, right? Or candidate reach out. I still source sometimes, which is great. Actually, I'm sourcing more now. And people would be like, oh shit, I didn't know you were still working because of my Millionaire Recruiter persona. Yeah. They were like, I didn't think you were still, you still recruited. And so it was almost like my brand was doing a disservice to my recruiting company, but yet doing a service to the coaching. Yeah. You know, so again, it's kind of like, and this is why, you know, we talked about in the episode of re-energizing yourself, why I'm kind of stuck into what I want to do, because I've built this brand that is getting stronger, but it's going in a different direction. And it's like, either I halt it and pivot into the other direction, pivot back, or I just let it go. But I don't know. I do think that personal branding is even more powerful, because now companies like, so brand ambassadors in the recruiting company are now getting paid pretty well. I mean, there's a lot of affiliate shit going on, which I hate. But there are starting to pay people that are building their personal brand, you know, in order to get their brand out and say, like, for example, you know, hey, I use Get Covey a lot, you know, although Covey doesn't pay me, but it would be something like that. Right. Yeah. So I definitely think people are trying to just grab different types of revenue because the TA recruiting world is so fucked up. And they're like, I don't know where I'm going to get my next paycheck from, because who knows how long I'm going to have this job. Who knows if they're going to continue to hire, you know? So I think that's why people are doing it.
I agree. So when I posed the question to you, like, do you think it still is important? You said for you, yes. But I want, like, as a general question, because thinking about how when we started this podcast, right? Like, and how many podcasts you see out there now. Like, we've been doing this podcast, for over 2 years.
We're almost at our 100th episode.
And so, like, we've been doing it for almost 2 years, which, I mean, at the time, I felt like, I remember thinking, like, well, everybody's doing a podcast, and why would they listen to ours over it? And it's, you know, it wasn't as saturated as it is now. Everyone is doing a podcast. And so that's why I was wondering if you think that somebody should still place the same amount of time, effort, and emphasis on things that you and I saw value in a few years ago and did a few years ago when the market was not as saturated. Do you think that is still a top priority for somebody who has no brand at all? Like, say they have a blank LinkedIn canvas.
Yeah. Okay. I love that question. I love that you phrase it like that. So if it were me today, I would not start a podcast and I would not start a YouTube. If this was me today and I had nothing. Yeah. However, what I would do is I absolutely would personal brand the shit out of my LinkedIn. I would become a top voice. So I've got top voice in recruiting right now. And I actually, I won't even go on that one, but there's lots of different top voices you can get, right? I would definitely contribute to articles. So it gives you that clout of like, yeah, actually, I pay attention to my community and I know what I'm saying. I think that's a really big deal. And I would go on webinars and I would be guests on podcasts.
Yeah.
So I would still be building my brand. I would still be building my voice, but I wouldn't be building an actual dedicated podcast or YouTube, because one, that's saturated, and two, I would have to have a full-blown plan and full-blown monetization plan for that. And with that plan costs money.
Yep.
So you're not going to become Mr. Beast. Hit me up, Mr. Beast. Not going to become Mr. Beast with like no money, like that, because it's so saturated. You definitely have to be paying, anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000 a month, to be honest with you. Like I've looked at it myself, being like, hey, do I want to, because like we grow organically, which is really great, and obviously Kate and brand and marketing does great too. We post and do that, but we don't pay for it.
Yeah.
So I think in order to get real traction, you do have to pay for it, especially if you're starting from scratch. And for me, I wouldn't have the appetite for that. And I don't think the industry has the appetite for it.
Boom. Like that's what the core of what I was trying to get to is that I think people think that they have to do these certain things to build a brand, like start a podcast. And so I'd like that you gave a couple of different examples and ways in which, if you were starting now, what you would do to build your brand, because I do think it's just a different time that we're living in. And it's just, it seems so easy to do XYZ, to do a YouTube, to do a podcast. And I mean, it isn't hard. Like, you just start talking about stuff. So anybody can do it. And everybody is realizing that in today's world. So that isn't going to make you necessarily stand out, I guess is where I'm going with that. Like, these things that made you stand out years ago are not applicable today because it's oversaturated and everybody's doing it. So the other ways in which you could build your personal brand to actually stand out amongst the masses are being a guest on podcasts, and hosting webinars or being a guest on webinars. Mm-hmm. And then how do you suggest people go about getting a guest spot on a podcast? Like, what are the steps they should take?
That's actually super easy. So I was going to talk to you about this woman that hit me up yesterday. She just reached out, be like, hey, I listened to your podcast. I would love to be the guest, and here's why. Cool. She goes, I've built an agency, sold an agency. Love to talk about it on your podcast. Awesome. So she's doing like reach out, right? Now, what's interesting on her in particular is I've noticed her commenting on a lot of my posts. So I was like, oh, who's this? That's another interesting tool. So if you have certain people that you follow, or certain people maybe you want to be like or be in the same arena with, I should say, not like arena, comment on all their stuff, because that's how you get recognized. And I think that's really interesting. Even like, let's just pivot to if you're looking for a job. Start commenting on all those posts, or, like comment on the director of TA's post at whatever company you want, and they're going to see you and hear you eventually. But where were we going with this? But there's tons of websites. So, I think it's like Pod Hunter. There's so many. Kate, make a list. So on the YouTube, in our comments and stuff, we'll put like a list, but you can literally just put your profile, your bio, your headshot, of course, your LinkedIn, and essentially be like, what do you like to talk about, and why should someone have you on the podcast? Mm-hmm. And you can be on tons of different websites. That's originally how I started getting on podcasts, is I just put my profile up there. You can pay if you want, if you like really want to accelerate. I think the going rate now is like $29 a month in order to really get noticed, from other podcasts, or just reach out directly. Like, come up with a whole list of the ones that make sense for you, like just like ours. Hit us up. And why though? But that's the thing. The why is so important. Don't just say, hey, can I be on your podcast, and expect that we're going to do the homework and say like, hey, is this person interesting? Yeah. Like, that drives me nuts. Same with job seekers. Don't just be like, hey, I'm looking for a job. Here's my resume. Yeah. What? Yeah. No. Do your goddamn homework. Sorry, I'm getting upset.
No, don't get up. I love when you get upset, but don't get upset on that. But I think that's our coming up on time here. I think that is the broke to boss tip, is like, when you're building your personal brand, know your why. Know what your goal is you're trying to achieve. Because I think even if you're just trying to build a personal brand to help with your job search, there's still so much time that you have to invest in building that personal brand. Like, it's an investment. And so it's going to be something that you have to maintain too. And so it's like understanding your why. Is it a means to an end? Because I mean, that seems like a lot of work to do, to just, once I get this job, I'm going to stop, So it's like, know your why. And then I think you have to invest in time. It seems like it's something that should be so thoughtless, but like, I really have to block off time on a calendar to go and engage on LinkedIn or do XYZ on LinkedIn, whether apply to job, whatever it is. You have to really like be scheduled about it, or I found I do, because if it's something that's like, oh, I'll get to it when I like lay in bed that night, it's like, no, that's not what I feel like doing. So treating it like a job function, you know, that you have to do, I think is really important. And, you know, again, broke to boss, know your why, why you're doing it. And I think your brand should align with that accordingly, you know?
Yep. Consistency. One last thing I got to add, consistency, because you talked about it, you know, looking on your phone, like you have all intentions to do it. But if you're not consistently doing it, like I know, like LinkedIn now, they change their algorithms, their analytics all the time, right? So it's like they now don't like you just to like posts. You need to comment.
Yeah.
Now they don't want you to reshare a post. They want you to like, you know, do it from scratch.
Yeah.
You know, so like, there's just so many things you have to keep up. Now we don't do hashtags, you know? So it's like you do have to keep up on that. And it can feel like a job. I mean, like we do the podcast for so many reasons. It feels good, but it's still a mini job, right? You know, it's like here we are. And if you watch the last 4 episodes, you see us wearing the same thing. It's because, you know, we pick one day to jam out a whole month.
Yeah.
You know, because otherwise it's, you know, you're kind of becoming like a slave to your podcast, which is supposed to be like the fun shit. And it is the fun shit, but it's still a job for sure.
Yeah. And anything you do like over and over and over again, the monotony of it, even if it's the funnest thing ever, like, I mean, like professional athletes that go and, you know, they play golf every single fucking day, right?
For 4 hours. I cannot imagine.
For 4, that's not, I mean, that's minimal. Like they
know that's
what course for like 8 hours to prep for their job. Like that's their job, you know? But even then, which like my husband would die and fall all over himself to get to play golf for a living. Like that's like a dream job to him. And so it's something he does for fun. And so something he does for fun, people get paid to do is like, you know, mind blown. But it still becomes a job to those people. Point being, like where it's like, I don't fucking feel like playing golf today. Well, you have to anyway. It's like anything that you have to do over and over and over again. And that's what I feel like that's going to be. So just like also have realistic expectations. Know your why and have realistic expectations with yourself of like, what is achievable? And if you don't like to do that stuff and it organically throughout the day, like I don't, I'm not big on social media, like just like you. I'm not on them a lot. On LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, none of it. And so it's very much something that I have to like be intentional, block time, put a calendar invite on my calendar to do XYZ with regards to like LinkedIn or engagement, because it's work to me. It's not something that I just enjoy doing organically or will do all throughout the day, every day. And I know that about myself. So I have to set time to do it. So I think just like, again, know your why, have realistic expectations or set realistic expectations with yourself. And, you know, if you have any questions, Brianna is like our building your personal brand guru. So definitely reach out.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Obviously, I have a lot of help behind the scenes and honestly, motivation. I think that's what's really important too. And something to talk about, and it's not this episode, is where do you find your motivation? So maybe we do another episode on that because we talked about how you can re-energize your career. But let's talk about how you find your motivation and your why, because people might, you know, be stuck there. And I think sometimes that might be why people are in ruts as well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, this was super fun. I love to hear that you're writing that down ferociously so we don't forget. Thank you.
I love that. No, because I like that. I think a lot of people, myself included, like that'll be a good episode for us to have and talk through. And I think like, you know, where do you find your motivation and your why? And that can probably change daily too. So that's one I'm going to ponder, put a lot of thought into before we have that episode. And I think that'll be a good one. Yeah.
Love it. Nice. All right. Thank you guys so much. See you next week. Bye.
Dreaming of starting your own recruiting agency, but you don't know where to begin? Leap over the hurdles with Start Your Own Recruiting Agency course. Benefit from my 15 years of experience to avoid the common mistakes and fast track to success. Turn your dream into reality with this comprehensive guide. Enroll now and take the first step towards your 6-figure milestone. Woo, woo. Click the link at the top of the description to learn more.